Hey everybody, this is Britton here, right on time no, it's 7:01, almost, right on time, almost, today. And I'm here to talk about Raising Children for Greatness. For those of you who know the group, welcome. You guys are so welcome here. My name is Britton LaTulip. I am the author of the Art of Raising Children for Greatness series. Right now we have 2 books. This was like the first book to kind of get you out of the public school system. It's Revealing School. It's a little thicker. And then the next book was going to be called The Art of Raising Children for Greatness. It was going to be so fat, and this one's skinny, but it's going to, this is 150 or something pages. It was going to be so fat that we decided it was going to take forever to write. We decided to just start releasing them one book at a time. The first book is Education. If you haven't read it, you can get these books on Amazon or on our site, Blue Manor Education. I'm sorry, I'm bleeding. I'm late. I was shaving quickly, and I'm bleeding, so if you see blood coming out my face, there's nothing wrong. It's just I didn't have time to shave properly. So that's what's going on. Today I wanted to talk about learning retention. I said your guys' questions were always the priority. I was actually going to tell you something different. I was going to talk about why I always wear pretty much the same shirts every time I come on and what the strategic mindset is behind that when I do these videos. But Sharon asked a question, so I'll talk about that some other time. And today I'm going to answer that question. Your guys' questions anywhere in the comments, they're always the priority. So as soon as you ask a question, that's what I'm doing. So I saw that question just a few minutes ago, and I'm going to try to answer it. Sharon is reading the book, Education, and in that we talk about how these schools are learning proofed, and I talk about that a whole bunch in Revealing School. And we all kind of know this. We accept this. We know that we've taken classes like I took calculus or I took chemistry, and I took actually an honors chemistry at prep school. It was the hardest class ever. It was the hardest unimaginable class that I've ever taken in my life. And I actually did pretty well. I think I got a B, but the class was so hard actually. They give you a 5.0 at that school because they don't want to destroy your GPA. Like these honor classes at prep school were so hard that nobody wanted to take them because it would destroy their GPA. So they actually give you a 5-point scale so that if you get an A, you get a 5.0 instead of a 4.0 to offset how challenging the class is. So I think I got a B, but they still gave me a 4.0, which is cool. But anyway, super hard class. I mastered it. I got a B. I studied intently. We had a 1-subject plan, which means we literally had 1 subject for, I think it was like 7 weeks. 1 subject all day long, about 3 hours of homework every night. 2 hours of it was mandatory. 1 hour was if you weren't done yet. So that's a lot of time. Maybe that's 10 hours of chemistry a day for 7.5 weeks. Just intense. And the reason I tell you that story is because, to be honest, I don't know anything about chemistry today. Or very little, no more than you. And I couldn't fill in a periodic table. Everything was a whirlwind. I was taken through that class. It was so overwhelming. We learned so much so fast. I can't remember anything. Hey, Jenny. By the way, I just saw you. Welcome. And so I don't remember anything of it. But I did really well, and I took this great class, and it was a great school, and it was a great curriculum. But here I am today as a 35-year-old adult, and what did my chemistry do for me? I didn't retain any of it. And that was at prep school. When you go to the public school system, you'll see these man-on-the-street interviews, and it's almost comical, but it's not, because it's a $1 trillion disaster, the public school system. And you'll see these kids, they're seniors, and they're doing a man-on-the-street interview. They're getting ready to graduate, and they can't tell you who the first president of the United States was. They don't know the war that we won our independence. They don't know any capitals. They don't know any states. They know nothing. After 13 years of public education, they know nothing. It's not funny. It's actually a $1 trillion disaster. And so I talk about in the book why schools are learning proofed and how you can do better in your homeschool. If you're going to take the time to educate your kids, you can put all that energy into them. It's important that they actually can retain and use some of it. So important. And it's not like the kids in public school aren't learning these things. I mean, I remember they taught us about George Washington probably in, I don't know, kindergarten or something. But for some reason, people are forgetting it. And so we're going to talk about that today. If you read the book, what she was specifically, hey Sharon, answering your question today. What Sharon was specifically asking about was the layer approach. So I don't want to tell you everything. Like there's a million reasons schools are learning proofed and kids will go through the system and learn nothing. One of the reasons that we're going to talk about today is what I call block learning. And that's exactly what I just described with chemistry. You've never seen chemistry your whole life. So you know nothing. Zero. All of a sudden, you get to high school, you take honors chemistry. and you just get a mountain of information. You get so much information. It's just a fire hose. You get blasted. And so what you have to do to survive, to get a decent grade, is you have to just gorge yourself. Just cram, 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 cram. You take a test. You can't retain that information after the test. After the test, you have to clear your brain. Just brain dump, and you move on to the next chapter. And then you just gorge, 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 cram, cram, cram. And you can, yeah, you're welcome, Sharon. And you retain nothing, because it's survival mode, and you're just cramming and regurgitating. And then finally, you get to the final, and this always happened to me. You don't remember any of the stuff that you learned throughout the year, so you cram, and you get the study sheet, and you go back to the beginning, and you go through all of it again, and you cram, and you stay up all night, and you regurgitate everything you can as quickly as you can on that chemistry test. I remember literally, like, I would be looking at my notes, boom, shut it and start the test, because there was so much stuff you had to know. And I would write as quickly as I can, because I knew that if I waited an hour, half of that stuff would be out of my brain already. So I'd write as quickly as I could. I'd get a really good grade on the test, and then guess what would happen? My study of chemistry had ended. Okay, I moved on to the next grade, or I moved on to the next class, the next subject, once that final was done, and I never saw chemistry again. So what happened is my whole life I was ignorant of chemistry, knew nothing about chemistry. All of a sudden, I was just overwhelmed. Just a horrible, horrible way to learn stuff. So much anxiety. Just remember being sick all the time. Like every test was stressful. It's not the way it's supposed to be. And then after that, I went back to my state of ignorance. Like slowly, not very long, maybe within 6 months. I don't think I could have passed any of those tests I had just taken. And now at 35, I wouldn't have a clue. It'd be like starting from scratch. So what did I actually accomplish taking that chemistry? Besides stressing myself out, I didn't retain anything. So it was kind of a waste. But we call that block, because it's just nothing and then a huge big block of information, and then it goes back to nothing. That's not what we want to do with education. With education, we want to build with layers. Think of steps. And instead of this big block, we take that huge block of information and we stretch it out over the years, and we create steps or layers. And what happens is each layer is very thin, very easy. We might start teaching chemistry, for example. I don't, but for example, we might start teaching chemistry when a kid's in preschool, if that's one of the things we think is important. So we start teaching just the basics of chemistry. I don't even want to use chemistry because I don't know anything. Horrible. But let's say U.S. history, because we do this on Blue Manor Academy, okay? So we'll take all of U.S. history and we'll boil it into like 10 sentences for a preschooler. And we want that preschooler to master those 10 sentences. He might read that book 100 times. When he gets done, he's going to know the full history of U.S. history. Like the full story. Not in detail, but he's going to see the beginning, when we started, up to the current time, and he's going to see the major points, the major signposts or something along the way. Like I would say, like the revolution's pretty important. The Civil War is super important. It's transformed our country forever. And that wasn't just slavery that ended. I mean, our form of government was transformed overnight, okay? You could say, next big thing, obviously World War I. Milestone, huge transformed this country. World War II. You could say the Vietnam War, stuff like that. So you take all of the major events in history and you just boil them down to a few events and a few presidents. They don't need to know every president, but you got to know George Washington, you got to know Lincoln. These are the big names, big name presidents, and that's it. And a kid, it's fun. It's not exhausting. It's not anxiety. We give them plenty of time. They could learn that in 6 months if they need. I mean, it's for preschool. But in other words, when they learn it, they retain it. They see it so much, they can regurgitate it. There's a video somewhere on YouTube of my little Emma. I think she was like 2 years old, and she knew who Muhammad was. She knew who George Washington was. She knew Benjamin Franklin. She knew who the Saul was, in the Bible, or Paul. She could tell you those things. It was really impressive for a 2-year-old. But it's because I didn't get a big fat book and go over the whole thing and then move on. We started with the first layer, and then we start adding more and more and more and more layers. Now she can tell you things about the Revolutionary War and characters. I don't even know who she's talking about. It's just almost over my head, and I write some of this curriculum. She's learned so much more. And she's now, 10. My goodness, she's 10. So each year she is studying. You saw the video. I know, she's adorable. It was funny when we shot that video. I'll have to tell that story sometime. But yeah, I mean, she's a whiz. But in other words, We never stop teaching U.S. history. It's not a class. It's not a block. We don't overwhelm our students. We begin teaching it because U.S. history is important. We begin teaching it in preschool, and we never stop teaching it. I still study U.S. history as an adult. I imagine my children will. We're never overwhelmed or anxiety-stricken or stressed out or confused because we're taking just little small bites and naturally building on it. We set our own pace, and we continually add layers. So that is the layer method. And because you're constantly reviewing it, like when she goes from preschool to first grade, she studies U.S. history again, she's going to be seeing all those major signposts, and then you're going to start filling in. So think of almost think of it like fence posts or something, or pillars, right? So you've got the major ones, right? And then you have all the events in between. So now we go back and we still see the major events, and then we start filling them in. But if they would do it today, they'd say, okay, we're going to study the Civil War this year. Well, they would tell you everything. You'd know everybody's name and everybody's grandma's name that ever fought in the Civil War and every battle, and you'd just be overwhelmed, and they'd never see it again, so you don't retain it. But what we would do is we'd say, okay, when I teach kids about the Civil War, I basically just say it was a war between the North and the South. I don't get into all the nuanced stuff. I don't get into the deeper history or the controversial history of the Civil War. I'm not sure if we say it was about ending slavery, but it certainly ended slavery. And if you've watched the other videos, I'm not going to defend that today. I know that there are a lot of people out there that if you say the Civil War was about anything else than slavery, only slavery, then you're crazy and you're hateful. I'm not going to debunk that again today. But at that age, I don't even teach them all that stuff. They don't need to know it. All I want them to know is the Civil War happened in preschool. And I want them to know that a major milestone, like after the Civil War, the South lost and slavery did end. Not immediately, but slavery did end, not with emancipation. I don't even tell them that. I just say that the Civil War ended and then Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. So that's it. That's level 1. And then next year, there's going to be a little bit thicker book. And you're going to go over that again. You're going to hear about the Civil War, but I'm going to fill in a few more details. And then the next year, a few more details. And because you're always recycling it, always reviewing it, you never forget it. You're never overwhelmed because it's smaller bite-size, levels. And then you never forget it. You're studying it for the rest of your life. Okay. So the next question Sharon asked was, well, what if you're starting this in high school? This is a real problem, especially if you're going the route of the public school system, because it's not ideal. The way that this is supposed to work is you start with the layers and you start in preschool so that by the time you get to the high school, you've already absorbed all of that huge block, and it's been stretched out over the years. So you've learned all the same amount, but it's been stretched out and it's been layered and it's been reviewed so you don't ever forget it. So if you were starting in high school, what would you do? Well, the other thing is you're not going to find a layered curriculum. We're the only company I know, there might be somebody, we're the only company I know that is developing a layered curriculum and an interwoven curriculum. And our curriculums can be so cool, but it's not in high school yet. And what we do is, for retention, is we have a spelling curriculum, we have a phonics curriculum, for example, we have a character curriculum, we have all these things, right? They're all on the same level and they're all intertwined. Like the spelling words come from the phonics words that your kid is reading. So he's learning to read them. Now he's going to remember to spell them. And then we get our spelling list from, we do our geography level 1, let's say, and maybe we say there's 3 oceans or something, or we go over a few of the states, or we don't do everything. We would just pick a few of the major states in America. Don't judge me if I didn't pick your state. I might have been biased and picked Idaho, even though we're probably not. I'm not even going to say anything about the states. But I picked out, the big players, like California, I'm not a big fan necessarily. They've kind of gone crazy, but it's a big player, so it's there. Same with New York, okay? Texas is there, first layer. But we'll take those and we'll use those as spelling words. So kids actually re-seeing it while they're learning it all. So it all kind of mixes together. So it reinforces each other. When we're reading literature, the literature we read backs up the character lessons. It backs up the history that we're reading. So it's all kind of works together. Okay. So how would I do this? Oh, and then the other thing is we have the layers. So we have preschool history, and then we have this history. And people are like, hey, didn't we just do this history? You just did U.S. history, now you're doing this history. Wait, you're doing right? Well, yeah, we're building layers. If you notice, the books are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the perspective is shifting and shifting a little bit as we get closer and closer to the truth and we broaden it. So that's how it's supposed to work. That's why our system is people don't understand the level of thought that was put into it, and it really is, it's genius, and it works so powerfully. They just look at it and they're like, oh, it's a bunch of books, and some of it repeats itself, and I thought we already learned this. And yeah, of course you did. You're introduced to it. We have to review it. Okay, so if we started in high school, what would I do if I start my kid in high school? I would still probably use the layered approach. And what you would do is and this depends too if you're going to put your kids into college or not, if that's your goal. Like, that's definitely going to shape what your kid's going to have to learn and the milestones they're going to have to hit before they go. But you could still do what they're doing. And then I would say the key is to review. So many times in workbooks, you finish this is not a workbook, but if I had one, you finish the homework, you take the quiz, and you move on to the next chapter. What I would recommend doing, and what we do a lot of times on Blue Manor, is we'll take some of the same questions from chapter 1 that you've already answered, you already got it correct, and we'll start incorporating it into chapter 2, so it's a cumulative. So as you learn chapter 2 and you go to take the test, you're actually going to see the same questions from chapter 1 too, because you're learning that. And then we get to chapter 3, you're going to see questions from chapter 2 and chapter 1. And what I'd like to do is have an automated system on Blue Manor Academy someday, where the questions that you missed in level 2, that you struggled with and you had to repeat a few times, because we do mastery, so you have to get them right eventually, those questions will be automatically put together and they'll show up in your next quiz. So the things that you struggled with will be showing up in your next quiz as you move on, and it keeps recycling. So that is the key, is constant review. After you finish a class, I don't know if you're going to, if you're in high school, I don't know what your curriculum's like, but I would say I would spread it out, and then I would constantly review. Go back and take the old test, or photocopy them before you take a test. Photocopy that test if you think it's important, it's a good curriculum. Photocopy that test, put it on the side, take the test. 6 months, a month, take the test again. It'll be so easy. Your kid's not going to have to study for it. It'll be fresh in their mind. It'll almost get annoying, like, oh gosh, I'm doing this again. Another month, take the test. Another month, take the test. Keep recycling those tests. It's not going to overwhelm your kid, because it's still going to be in their head, and you're just quickly reviewing it. They should go through the questions pretty easily. It'll help them retain it. So even though it's not a perfect layer method, you're recycling the same information over and over. That happened to me so often, like in Spanish. I remember, you conjugate all these verbs for whatever the word was, and then you wouldn't see them again. So you just forgot them. But those words should be on the next test, mixed in with the new words. And then the next test should mix all that stuff in with the new words. You have to keep seeing it, and then you won't forget it. And there's other ways to retain besides layers. I could get into those later. Hopefully, I don't know, Sharon, have you got to the part about the learning pyramid? Because I think that's so important for retention. If you're still there, Sharon, did you see that part on the learning pyramid? So if she's still there, she'll answer. We'll see. But that's important. Thank you so much. Yeah, Sharon, did you see that part on the learning pyramid? Because it's not about layers, but it's another important part of retention. Layers is just really about the curriculum, how it should be laid out for retention. But the method of learning is going to be really important, and that is called the learning pyramid. I don't know how long I've been on this thing. I should save it for next week. Maybe that'll be the topic next week, will be the learning pyramid. Hopefully you'll have read it by then. That is essential. That's, I think, as important as learning in layers. And if I was going to start in high school, you can't really go back and redo all the layers for all the years. It's too late. Some of that stuff that you've taken, studied, is just lost, unfortunately. Like with chemistry, if I needed to know it, I'd have to go start over. It's so sad. Maybe it's deep in my subconscious, and maybe it wouldn't be as hard. But next week, I'll talk about the learning pyramid. Yeah, Janine says save it so I don't ramble, start something new. But that is really important. The way that schools are educating is the worst way possible. The worst way possible. Reading and listening are the lowest forms of learning. The reason that we read is because we have to. You don't have access to all those people, but I'm going to save it. And I'll tell you the secret, or you can read the book, the secret to retaining. My wife knows the secret because I do it to her all the time. It annoys the heck out of her. But then people wonder, like, how can you just recall so much stuff? How can you recall so much stuff? It's all in your head. You just regurgitate it. And I'll give you that secret. And this is actually an anomaly. I took a real estate class a long time ago, and people were like, dude, how do you do this? Is crazy. And they would have these stacks of notes. I don't know if you read that. You read that part, the note takers. And they tried so hard, and it looked like it just came natural to me. And people were kind of amazed by it or something. I'm like, no, dude, I have a different approach. And if you did the same thing, you'd have no problem with this either. So I will share that next week. That'll be my topic for next week. Somebody make a note, write in the questions, like talk about the learning pyramid so I don't forget. The learning pyramid is really important for retention. So talk about that next week. I'm going to cut it off before I ramble. I'm trying to get better at that, not rambling, because these are totally live. I don't even have bullet points really today. So anyway, all right. We'll talk to you later. Hopefully sharing that answers your question. If you need follow-up questions about the layers, hopefully that made sense of how to do it in high school. The best way to do it in high school is, the problem is traditional high school, you're going to have so much stuff. It's going to be so intense. They're going to want you to cover so much. It's not even it might not even be possible really to spread it out because you just have so much. But you might take the same textbooks you do and say, okay, we'll start all of them this year and we'll just do a little bit. But the problem is the way their curriculums are, they're not done for layers. You don't get a little bit and then you add the next layer. They're done, even within the textbooks, they do blocks. So you'll study U.S. history and the first block will be all about the Revolution. And then the next block will be all about the Civil War. It shouldn't be. The first chapter should be all about the Revolution and the Civil War and World War II and up to the modern, but it should just be a snippet, a few paragraphs. And then the next chapter should be all about the same stuff, but a little bit more. But see, that curriculum isn't available, so it's almost not possible. So I would say, Sharon, the best thing to do for now is to just constantly review the quizzes and tests. Have her take them again, then again. I would almost schedule maybe in the beginning, right after she takes it, let's say a quiz or test. She should see that again in a few days or a week. And then she should see it again for a few weeks. Maybe do that for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. Then do it every 2 weeks and then every month so that she's constantly recycling it. And eventually, and it's not going to be pressure because these quizzes are going to be so easy because she sees them all the time. She'll be like, oh, again? Yeah, do it again. It'll help. And she'll never forget it. But if you do it the old-fashioned way, you take the quiz, move on, she won't retain anything. So I did kind of like a spiral approach. Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to say it too. You start working your way out and get wider and wider, but the core is the same. And I like the spiral. Maybe I'll steal that. That's a good analogy. So all right, I'm done. Thank you so much, Sharon. Ask any other questions if you want follow up. That was just off the top of my head. Read the book. The book is great. I know you are, but for other people watching, read the book. It's really interesting. It's a very unique approach. It's powerful. Character. We're in the final home stretch. We got a few more chapters. I'm gonna try to really come through with what I said that it'll be out this summer. The editing process is laborious, but it's coming. It should be out this summer. That's twice as big as this and twice as important. Character is almost everything when it comes to raising children for greatness. So thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you next week. Thank you for asking questions, Sharon. That helps me know what you guys want to hear, what you want to talk about. Thanks so much. Talk to you later. Bye.